So normally with my criticism carousel, I take 4 to 6 games that I played over on Twitch that I didn't review formally and give them to you here in the little short mini review format. But for some reason this time, I decided to do them all. AKA, any game that I didn't formally review that I played over on Twitch for at least 2 hours or so is in this video. Every single one. You can understand why this one took a little bit longer than most. And not all of them are going to be huge reviews. Some of them are going to be straightforward. But part of the reason I did this was I was a little lax on my Steam reviews this time. And well, I'm going to link this video to the certain timestamps of it. So without further ado, these are the games I played in May and June that I didn't do a review on and what I thought of them. The game that I'm starting with, despite the fact that I do think I will review it at one point, is Greedventory. I do this because I'm not taking any chances that anyone who starts watching this video doesn't hear about the game because I put it at the end. If there's one thing that you need to take away from this video, is that you need to play Greedventory. If the game finishes like I hope it will in terms of keeping its consistency and quality, it's going to be on my indie game wall of fame, which yes, is a real thing. Still need to find something for Never Awake though. Greedventory is a linear action RPG with mouse and keyboard controls, which may sound weird at first that I'm defining that, but it actually helps define a reasonably unique adventure. You fight by clicks and slashes of the enemy, along with some skills that you can use with the keyboard. But the big thing here is that everything is mouse and keyboard driven, to the point where you do things like block projectiles with a shield with physics involved. Opponent launching a poison grenade at you? Not only can you deflect the grenade with your mouse to avoid the damage, you can deflect it in a way to push the grenade back to the enemy, damaging them instead. Now, this may have been done in other games before, but it's just one of the types of interactions this combat can give you. And over the 15 hours I've played so far, that doesn't get old in any way. The game does a masterful job of mixing up the combat scenarios to the point where you're always on edge, even with the most mundane battles. Throwing healing potions that can heal you if you throw them to yourself, saving a precious healing potion of your own. Well, I mean using theirs instead. Having your mouse stick on a goopy surface you could have avoided, and forcing you to quickly free yourself to defend from a melee attack that's coming with your shield. Using an enemy electric ball on your sword to charge it up for a major attack. That's only a few of the interactions you can run into here. Combat is one of the big highlights, with an even bigger highlight being the tough boss battles that have multiple stages and force you to think on the fly, managing your resources while not letting you exploit any one particular weakness or mechanic. More than any other game lately, this made me go into a boss fight that I had already tried and really change my loadout or change the way I approached it because I needed that little extra boost to get me over the hump. I did die on them a good amount of times, but I always learned some piece of information, and the game made me want to go back rather than get frustrated more than anything else. It also helps that the art style is both goofy, functional, and appeasing to the eye. I love the fact that every piece of armor and weaponry have unique models that show up on your character, making it your own, with the most rare items even being animated in certain ways. The animation and art in general is fantastic, with even the smallest task like breaking a pot looking lovely and never taking you out of the moment of your adventure. Look, I could keep on going on and on about what I think of Greedventory, and that's what the eventual review will be. I promise I will do a review whether or not it is the next one or the ones after. But regardless, I think Greedventory is not only worth your time and money right now, I'm willing to put my name behind it and say it's a must-buy. The fact of the matter is, I've enjoyed myself up to this point so much that it has been a great return even though I haven't finished the game. And I could see myself replaying the game and trying different builds and different equipment and different everything. And this is coming from someone who's always playing the next one because he's got to review it. If I'm willing to go back right away, yeah, that's saying something. So yeah, go play Greedventory. Watch the rest of the video first, but go play Greedventory. Old school side-scrolling platformers are one of the games that I grew up on, and I always like a good gimmick to go with them. So Batboy having a Sentai Power Rangers story about a bunch of sports athletes who fight crime by night, being thrown into a competition and world they have to fight out of, it's goofy in all the right ways. A solid set of controls highlights a gimmick of using Batboy's iconic weapon in a variety of ways, whether it's firing projectiles back at the enemies or using it to pogo off them to get to new locations or heights. Combat is simple but clean, focusing on simple iterations with enemies that do one or two things in a basic non-boss battles. Level design is straightforward too, but well done, giving you small challenges and some creative solutions to problems, and having good gimmicks here and there. The boss fights are challenging and fun, and do feel very Mega Man-like in their implementation, especially when they give you a new skill afterward of varying usefulness. Batboy also gets the difficulty and pacing right when it comes to pushing the player. It knows when to make things slightly harder to test the player, but not so much that you don't want to play the game anymore. Granted, this means if you come back from not playing it after a while and forget everything skill-wise that you probably need to actually get through the levels, you'll probably need to play earlier levels to get back into the groove. Of course, this didn't happen to me. I'm a skilled YouTube reviewer. Don't look behind the curtain, please. Nevertheless, each of the theme levels have their own uniqueness that makes them stand out, and I really did appreciate how many parallels there were to Mega Man, while there was still Batboy's uniqueness driving it forward. Is it the greatest platformer or side-scroller in the last 5 years? No. Is it in the top 10%? Probably not, but it's in the top 25-30%, at least the ones that I played, and that's definitely worth your time. Honestly, it's just nice to see an arcade sports game like Tape to Tape on the list coming out in 2023 that's worth your time. But one that has roguelike elements as well? Yeah, you know me, I'm on board, even if the game is in early access. And don't get me wrong, there's some flaws in the game, and it's gotten some improvements even in the time it's been out. But let me tell ya, scoring in the early versions was hard with the goalkeeper AI. But what I can't overlook is the fact that the game is fun, plain and simple. First of all, I like that I could see the basics of hockey at work here. Games like NBA Jam, like NFL Blitz, they worked not only because they were over the top, but it got the basics right that allowed for the basic strategies in those games to be used in some form. Which is the case in Tape to Tape. Setting up deflections or quick passes for one-timers are effective, but are just enhanced by the skills and power-ups that are available here. From hockey sticks that can be used to knock players down by a throw, to a yo-yo that can recall a puck when used. You've got the tools for some absolute chaos here. The short periods put pressure to get goals and feels right in the sweet spot of enough time to put a plan together if you're down, but not enough where the game is dragging on and on. The roguelite nature of the campaign does enough to want you to come back with getting new upgrades and player options, although some players may want more variety in the early game. It's also a game that you need to give a little time, because some of the things are really usable here, but they may be improved in the future with different updates, but still are fun once you get a basic handle of it. Things like checking takes time to get a hold of in terms of speed of players. Checking is when you slam another player and try to take the puck from them, basically. And while I do think some changes to the change player element can be considered so that you're 100% sure who you're changing to every time, it also causes its own little bit of chaos. You sort of have those moments where you're like, oh wait, I didn't choose the right player, let me hit again, And while you get used to, hitting it a couple times, it also has some unpredictability, which is good for a game like this. One word I would describe this game with is creativity. I love the creativity of having a team of refs you have to fight in the campaign, for example, where the actual ref will knock you down to give his buds an advantage or throw the puck to his own team on the face-off. Even going so far to call off a clear goal because, well, he's the ref. It's playing to certain tropes of the genre, and that's something I can't overstate here. As a hockey fan myself, both a Blackhawks original fan and a Transplanted Lightning fan, what really sells me on Tape to Tape is the dedication to the little things the game does. Like when a goal is scored and after the face-off, hearing the announcer, who doesn't have the budget to announce every named player and goal type, but hearing the mumbling and the cheers that happen, especially at home games, it's great. I always say that when a game can do those little things that I notice, it's doing something right. And Tape to Tape, it's doing something right. Trepang 2 is next, and it's a game that I will recommend to experienced FPS fans or people who really want a challenge in the first-person shooter genre, because I think in the end, that's the audience it's really focused on and what it does the best. Being in a firefight with multiple enemies, trying to keep yourself alive while having little ammo on hard difficulties, that's the rush that Trepang 2 can have at certain moments. Hell, there was a sequence in the game that took me about 2 hours to get through because I was stubborn enough not to restart with better health and ammo, and I really appreciated how hard it was to knock off even one enemy safely. Sure, I've got stealth to reposition at any point, but it can only do so much with overwhelming force, and the AI is smart enough, most of the time, not to just decouple and go off and be a target. It's how in a hijacking mission, the enemy pushes to disable your hack, and if you don't take care of it quickly, it'll come to bite you in the ass, as you'll eventually lose out to the forces. It's how most of the guns you can't aim down the sights to begin with, and you actually have a bit of recoil that you'll have to deal with. It's the fact that, for some reason, the game starts throwing goop people at you out of nowhere. The game is always keeping you on your toes, especially in those harder difficulties. Headshots are vital, enemy armor will keep them safe, and it feels like hitting a long-range shot is a godsend, or that you've gotten really good at the game. It reminded me of the early days of the Fear games in a lot of good ways, and it's a game that stresses me out, but while having fun in the process. Now, is it the most interesting FPS in the world? No, the story is nothing to write home about, and it's not on the highest level of games like Doom 2016. The music is good, not great, and the visuals are great, but you do get a lot of the same thing. But it's not that far behind in the FPS tier list, especially in the gameplay department. So if you want an FPS, go with this. Bookwalker is going to be a game for you narrative lovers out there. Its basic RPG mechanics for combat and change between first-person real-world and isometric puzzle solving and combat are really just the tools for the story to be told here, which is a reasonable one. The presentation of this world, where writing can easily be banned from a writer that can create worlds that they can literally dive into, is fascinating, especially when you start exploring all the different worlds the game has to offer. The overarching narrative of this protagonist, who's trying to free himself from the locks of having his writing taken away from him and what caused it in the first place, is a great mystery setup that has you guessing at each reveal in a good way. Even if the choices in the end feel very telltale in nature, it doesn't take away from the fact that you'll connect with even the smallest characters here, kicking yourself when you have to take a battery from a robot friend even though it rips out your soul every single time. Its writing is smart with the small details, and the worlds created here give you enough imagination to picture what's beyond the walls of the pages, but also poses questions about how everything works. And I don't want to go into too much other detail regarding the story here, because quite frankly, it's a game that's fully enjoyed when you go in super blind. But hey, it's on Game Pass, so really, that's the perfect place to try it out. because if the story hits with you, you're going to have a game that you'll remember for quite a time. With the Squeal of the Pig, I took a gamble on a small horror game that no one had heard of, and it failed miserably. A forgettable story that tries to go for some shock and surprise, but ends up causing more confusion with its themes, and gameplay that's literally a few puzzles and that's it. It's a huge pass. It's not even bad enough to laugh at. Moving on. As for the next game, HROT is in a weird place for me. I enjoyed what I played of it, don't get me wrong. The retro FPS feel of the game was great, and I did like the sampling I took of the different campaigns, how they all felt a tiny bit different in feel, yet all had similar challenges in the old school first-person shooter genre. A little more horror-focused in one, a little more action in another, for example. The speed and gunplay were up my alley for the retro FPS, and the challenge, especially for you old school FPS players, is there. And despite the presentation basically being brown, brown, and more brown, it somehow was fun to go around in the environments, especially when you found a goofy secret that the dev had left, like the dancing otters. The thing is though, this is the definition of a solid FPS that doesn't necessarily have one unique thing that makes it stand out that tells you to grab it now at full price. It suffers from the fact that you probably haven't played the sheer amount of good FPS retro experiences out there, like Dusk for example, that you could probably get during a sale and not pay full price for. Now, if you're an old school FPS player, yeah, pick it up. It is great. And do it when you can. Otherwise, I can see putting it on your wish list and waiting until it goes on sale. Although it does have some unique elements in terms of this Bomberman mode that they apparently just added in terms of mods. So keep an eye on it at least, because it could get really creative in the future. The Segment Twins had a good first impression with reasonable controls, a presentation that was different but interesting, and combat that was decent with skills that were tied to how well you were doing. However, it got repetitive way too quickly for an action game like this, and while switching between the characters back and forth was a cool concept, it just didn't have the variety in the end to be worth recommending, especially for the short runtime. Yes, it's replayable, but replayable in what way? You're going to be doing mostly the same thing. It feels like the characters and the story elements at the start of the game had a lot of potential and made me curious. I liked their designs, but nothing really happens with them from a story perspective at all, and the look of the actual game, you don't get to see their look a lot. Sadly, this is a pass in the big picture, but there's definitely potential with this developer if they have the right captain steering the ship from a game design perspective. Tiny Thor is a game that I would strongly advise the developer to release a demo of. Yes, I know you can play the game with the refund system, but it's the type of game which is going to be very hit or miss with players with the way it uses Thor's hammer and its controls along with the platforming. Either you'll love bouncing your hammer off the walls to take out enemies, or how the game can challenge you with new hazards and enemies, or you'll get so frustrated with it, thinking the game's flow is so uneasy and the hammer is more trouble than it's worth, that you'll just scream that the game sucks and refund it. And I think the game is great. I think the presentation is fantastic. I think the sound and music is good, but it is also a game that takes a little bit of time to get into and understand. It is a game that I could see really getting under your skin. So it's hard to say if it's right for you or not until you try it. And that's the thing. With platformer controls like this, it takes a little bit of time to get used to these controls and the flow. And, well, that's why I would recommend the demo to the actual developers. I'm actually glad that I didn't get a review copy. I didn't ask for one, but didn't get a review copy of this because I could see myself really frustrated with trying to get those enhancers right. Because it is a game that's either going to really be in your wheelhouse or not. and I don't know where that would start or stop. It's definitely a controller game, at least in my opinion, but I would try the game. Buy it, refund it if you need to, or hopefully they'll release a demo one day. But Tiny Thor's presentation is great, its gameplay is good, and I think it is worth your time. And definitely if it's cheaper. Zombie Soup is the most confusing game in this entire lineup, because it feels like a game that was fighting itself, yet somehow was doing okay while I was playing it, at least at first. The cramped corridors of the hotel and the fight systems present felt like you could exploit them way too much, and it felt extremely easy while having a cheesy 80s cartoon vibe to it. Was it fun? Not necessarily in that first part, but it was playable. Then you get to the first boss, well, one of the first major bosses, which completely kicks your ass over and over again because the game does not give you enough information about what you're supposed to do and what you're doing wrong to avoid his super mega attack. Honestly, this game made me stop playing it at that point because I didn't feel like it was worth it. Now, it's an early access title, so they could go back and fix it, but the problem here is that when I look at the actual base of the game, the architecture of the game, I just get so many conflicting elements. Yeah, you've got some guns that you can use, and there's some different types of weaponry and skills that you can equip, but they don't seem to really fit the level design or the gameplay design as a whole. So I would say pass on this as a whole. With Warhammer 40k Boltgun, look, I could sit here and give you a mini review, but it's a great classic type FPS that has a great visual look, great theming to the Warhammer universe that makes me want to explore it more, despite the fact that I don't have time to do that, and fantastic feeling shooting, controls, secrets, and everything you would want from a modern boomer shooter type game. And everyone else has also said that who have played the game and sung its praises. So I'm not going to spend that much time saying that, yes, it's definitely worth your time. Go watch SkillUp's review on it. That's pretty much all you need. Yes, play the game when you have a chance. Choo Survivor's next. No. Just no. It was repetitive in the worst ways, not even worth 20 minutes of playing before I wanted to move on. Even on a mobile platform, there's a lot better games in the Survivors genre, and it definitely was a chore to play on the PC, even with the limited control set. There's not enough action here. Just go play Vampire Survivors or several of the other good Survivor clones out there. Pass. Next up, Nightcrawlers is one of those games that I feel like I want to recommend more than I actually should. It's got a weird uniqueness to it in the movement and animation that has ragdoll-like physics to it in nature, and feels like a game that has some weird quirks that feel broken or sort of buggy at first, but seem to be part of the design. Like being able to spawn waves and waves with the summoning circle by just rapidly hitting a button, and that seems to be part of the design based on the developer. Well, he was in one of the live streams that I did. You can actually fudge yourself over if you get a little bit too aggressive with that, so I do think it has a unique element to it compared to others. And there is a good amount of meta progression that I wish I had the time to dig into more in the overall picture. The thing is though, it does get repetitive rather quickly, and even with different skills and items to get, that doesn't really change. The Diablo-like loot system and essence system is intriguing, however, and if you think you are the kind of person who doesn't mind grinding and likes to see the numbers go up on sort of runs over and over again, this may be a game for you that's worth playing. I would watch a couple of streams or other people play the game and try to understand if the game is for you. It is a game that I would love to play more of, but I've got too many other games to cover. The animation quality and presentation of Death or Treat is really the biggest thing to write home about with this game, but its gameplay cycle didn't grab me in any significant way, and it really felt a bit clunky in the end. It's hard to recommend this game over similar games like Have a Nice Death that do it so much better, and it just didn't feel right to play with a controller when all was said and done. I mean, it looks nice. That's great. But there's just too much competition in the roguelike genre. So I would give this one a pass. The weird thing about Oblivion Override is that it's the last game I remembered to qualify for this list, which usually is a bad sign. Even the worst games should stand out, and games in the middle in terms of quality end up floating into the ether of the massive game library out there, almost destined to be forgotten. And yet, I'm kicking myself because this early access title was a lot of fun in the roguelike action genre. Felt unique with its characters, its weapon and skill system that was more on the fly than I expected. And I didn't have a lot of huge criticisms at the time when I streamed it. It felt worth your time, it was early access but had a lot of content, and it felt like it could be refined in certain areas, but it felt like you could play it right now and get several runs in and then enjoy several runs the next day. Different weapons, different skills, it just felt so different, even though it was a roguelike action game. And when I started this video, I was expecting to choose 4 to 6 games like I have in the other ones that I've done. And how I didn't remember this game in the first 4 to 6 is sort of insane to me. Maybe I'm taking on too much, maybe I'm doing too many games, but this game should have been something that I screamed from the mountaintops saying, hey, you should play this. What I want to do is that I want to cover this game Friday on Twitch. Yes, I know, I'm plugging the Twitch, I know. But all the games on this list, I first played on Twitch the day it came out, to show you guys exactly what these games had to offer. And because this is an early access title, I want to see what kind of things they've done since its release. The fact of the matter is, it was great on release, and I want to see more of it. I want to see where the story goes in terms of this robot and what this world is. I want to see the different weapons that I could come across. I want to see more of the skill tree, how the skill tree was a little bit different in terms of not just being plus 5 HP. It seemed to have a little bit more depth to that. And I want to see what kind of environments I can run across. So, I will play it on Friday on Twitch. Anyway, this game was fantastic. Play it. Or watch me play it. Or watch someone else play it. No, seriously, play it. With AEW Fight Forever, look, I like wrestling. I like AEW and WWE and New Japan Pro Wrestling, and I like wrestling. Just ask my fiance. I'm a little bit... I wouldn't say obsessed. Yeah, obsessed with it. I do need to play more of AEW Fight Forever, however, but end of story, it was buggy on release, but was definitely more arcade-flavored than the WWE games of this era. It takes a little bit of time to get used to the control set. It definitely feels like a first game from a developer, despite the fact that I think the developer used to work on WWE games. Granted, for an AEW fan, seeing your favorites and getting to play with them was fun, and the systems worked here. It's over the top in the right ways, although I did want to see more from the custom wrestler portion. I'll probably stream it again a chance or two, especially with updates like Stadium Stampede that's coming. It is probably for hardcore wrestling fans out there. Otherwise, I'd wait for a sale before picking it up if you want an arcade experience. The fact is, it's probably not worth the $60, $70 price tag. Is it 60 or 70? Nah, I don't know. It's not worth that much, though. With Touhou Gensou Survivors, it's cheap and can feed a Survivor-type fix if they really need it at 99 cents. It's a little bit different and a little bit different enough in its implementation with its item system to make it worth your while, and it can sort of have that dopamine rush of, oh, I'm going to keep myself alive, oh, what's the best combination here? It keeps your attention. Now, I would only recommend it to hardcore Survivor-type players out there, because other than that, you probably have better choices in the genre. But this is for a $1 game, and well, can you really argue with a $1 game that gives you this kind of rush? No. It's the time that will be the element here. And well, it's going to be for a certain type of player. Let's just put it like that. Unfortunately for our next game, Mislight, it suffers from one thing and one thing alone. Its genre is completely oversaturated with fantastic Metroidvanias with unique elements and really good gameplay. All games that are worth playing, but you sort of need to stand out. It's got a good look, some interesting story elements about a girl kidnapped into a world of darkness, and it's okay from a gameplay and level design perspective. Although I will admit, I kept on getting lost and felt like I needed a little bit more oomph from the combat. I do feel bad that I didn't do a Steam review at the time, at least when it came out. It deserves more than 3 reviews. And part of the reason that I am doing all these games in one video is so that I can link this video in Steam reviews that I missed. I need to do that more for games that I do stream. But with the same breath, it's just in a genre that constantly has even better games that don't even get the attention they deserve. I mean, look at the last 2 videos of my criticism carousels. There's a good amount of Metroidvanias in there, and Mislight gets pushed into the darkness because of it. It just can't stand out compared to them. It's good, not great. And this is for the last game on this list. Look, I played System Shock 2, and I liked it. I didn't love it at the time, but I liked it. And the System Shock remake, I liked what I played of this one. I liked that I had to really consider how to attack enemies and conserve certain ammo, and I actually like that it's not as complicated as some of the more immersive sims out there for someone who's jumping from game to game. Yeah, I would love to get immersed in the game like System Shock 2 right now, but when you're reviewing games over and over again as an indie game reviewer, sometimes everything starts to get jumbled. But I also don't feel comfortable giving that much of an opinion on the game right now. I don't think I've played that much of it. I played 2.5 hours of it because I feel like I need to play a lot more of it to give you a reasonable opinion on it, because that's just it. There's a lot more depth to the game, and I don't think I can get that in 2 hours. The thing about being an indie game reviewer like me is that you're always playing a lot of games and starting a lot of games, but you're not always finishing them, especially with the way I do things. I want to cover a lot of indie games and give them the attention they deserve. And with the current market as it is right now, just getting even an hour or 2 in a game, seeing what it has to offer, putting a Steam review on there to say what I experienced can help a game a lot. Even if it's only a couple of sales, that's a couple of sales more than they might have gotten. Yes, I don't necessarily have the biggest audience, but sometimes people do see a game, they're like, oh, great, that's wonderful, and they pick it up. But with that said, there is a downside to that kind of coverage. I don't necessarily beat a lot of the games that I play, and especially games that I am very interested in and really want to play more of it, but never get back to. Games like Crosscode, games like Spiritfarer. I have said that I really love these games, but I also don't have a review on the channel, and I don't necessarily have the time to do that. But over the last couple of months, and the last couple of years, frankly, I've seen my backlog grow over and over and over again. And the fact of the matter is, I sort of want to get back to some of those games. And I really want to experience some of the best parts of it, because I also think playing through those games, understanding how good they are, can help me grow as a reviewer. And I've told myself that I would do that. I've taken polls on this YouTube channel saying, hey, which game do you want me to cover? Which game do you want me to play? And even though I have that, I always get sort of paralyzed at the fact that there's so many games on that list of my backlog that I really want to play that I end up not playing anything and just going to the next game in the list. And so I think I have a solution for that. Meet the prize wheel. Yep, it's a standard prize wheel. But here's the thing about this one. This is going to help me choose a game to review in the background. And what I mean by the background is that if there's an upcoming game that I really want to review and I get a review copy for, that will take first precedent. But other than that, I can work on a review that I want to play over time. I can, play a little here, play a little there, and end up having maybe even a better review out of it. So, here's the wheel on its first go. I took some recommendations from certain people, and I sort of adjusted it a little bit to try to match some games that I really want to play and your recommendations as well. Hopefully this works. Hopefully that it will be something that will be interesting to you guys. And I would love to hear your feedback on this idea in the comment section below. But that's going to be the end of the video. The spin of that wheel, it'll of course be done by Vlad because, of course, Vlad is the mascot of this channel? Leader of the channel? I don't know anymore. But regardless, I will see you all later. I don't know what I'm going to review next because I'm literally going to spin this wheel as the last thing, and I may get other review copies during that time. But until then, I'll see you later, and as always, keep on gaming. Okay, so as you can see here, there is a variety of different games available in terms of what could be spun on the wheel. Some of them came directly from you. Some of them being like Pokemon, ? Didn't say what Pokemon it was. Games like Panorama, We Love Katamari, Parasite Eve, Spiritfarer, and some of them were games that I've wanted to get back to or start at this point. Raincode, Time Splitters, Greedventory. So, of course, we're going to let one person and one person only spin the wheel. And we get Time Splitters. It's a game that I have in my retro category that I have actually never played, but I've always wanted. And I grabbed it, and, well, looks like that's the first one we will be doing in this series. So, thank you. And, as always, keep on gaming. No matter what.